Thank you for joining us today on Radio Free New Hampshire for our continuing series on the Mossberg Maverick 88. Today we're going to cover takedown and reassembly or field stripping, and once again I'm not a gunsmith nor a firearms expert, just a hobbyist, and if I can do it, you can do it. The first thing that we want to do when field stripping our weapon is to check the chamber, make sure that there are no rounds or other debris and that the weapon is unsafe. And as always, keep the weapon pointed in a safe direction. The first step in disassembly is to remove the barrel. We're going to loosen the takedown screw and wiggle the barrel until it's released. The next thing that we're going to do is to remove the trigger assembly. To do so, just depress this pin with a small object, slide the pin out, slide the bolt about halfway forward, gently lift up on the trigger assembly and remove it. Next, we're going to remove two small bars that are inside the receiver. You can pretty much shake the weapon side to side or gently tap it. These two pieces are called the cartridge stop and the cartridge interrupter assembly. Now we're going to take out the bolt slide. This is a flat piece of metal and you'll see an angled piece on one end. Remember what that looks like because you're going to need to make sure that it lines up with the bolt when you go to reassemble the Mossberg. Next, we're going to remove the forearm assembly. Just apply even pressure and it should slide right off of the magazine tube. Now you can remove the bolt assembly by sliding it forward out of the receiver through the barrel opening at the front. The final piece that we're going to remove is called the elevator assembly. This is the piece that lifts the shell up into the chamber when chambering around. Now your Mossberg Maverick 88 is broken down into the basic components necessary for cleaning. To reassemble the Mossberg, the first step is to slide the forearm assembly over the magazine tube. In order to line up the arms with the holes in the receiver, you may have to depress them slightly as shown. Next, we're going to reinsert the elevator. Just squeeze the end together and insert it into the receiver. Line those pins up with the holes in the sides of the receiver. You'll know when it seats. It makes a very satisfying clicking sound. Once the elevator is reinstalled, push it down so it leaves just enough room for the bolt to slide in. Before you reinsert the bolt, make sure that you push the bolt lock downwards inside the bolt. If you don't do this, it's going to be impossible to slide it past the ejector. With the bolt in place, the next piece to go in is the bolt slide assembly. That's that flat piece of metal with the hooked end that we talked about earlier. Before you insert the bolt slide, make sure that the bolt is about halfway back. You'll see that the arms from the forearm assembly also need to line up with that as well. You may find that you need to wiggle the bolt slide back and forth. If it gets jammed, just pull it out and start over again. Make sure that it seats properly in the bolt and lines up with the raised portion of the forearm assembly arms. When seated properly, it'll look like this. Keeping the bolt about halfway forward, the next piece that we're going to insert is the cartridge stop assembly. That's that flatter bar with the hooked end. Make sure that hook is pointing into the receiver, not out. Once the cartridge stop is in place, the next piece is the cartridge interrupter assembly. That's the piece that has the more pronounced stud on one side and a little bit sharper hook. Just line up that stud with the hole in the side of the receiver, and it should go together fairly easily. The challenge now is to keep those two pieces in place while you reinsert the trigger assembly. I find it easier to keep a little bit of pressure from the inside of the receiver on both pieces while I reinsert it. Make sure that the trigger assembly is fully seated. Line up the hole on the side of the receiver with the hole through the assembly and slide the pin into place. The final component is the barrel. Make sure that your bolt assembly is all the way to the rear. Line up the end of the barrel with the opening in the receiver. Wiggle it back and forth until it slides into place. Tighten the takedown screw finger tight to hold the barrel securely in place. Finger tight is all you need. Never use a tool to tighten this, as it will over tighten and possibly damage the weapon. Once your Maverick is reassembled, cycle the action several times to make sure that everything has been reassembled properly. It is okay to dry fire your Maverick as long as the barrel is installed. And that completes our video on the takedown and reassembly of the Maverick 88. Thank you for joining us today on Radio Free New Hampshire. Please do check back for future installments on our series on the Mossberg Maverick 88.